We all do it, right?
Right.
I mean, we go about our day grabbing groceries, hitting that sign up button for new streaming service, whatever it is.
Hmm.
We tend to trust that things are fair, things are going to work out the way they should.
Sure.
But, and there's a but coming.
Yeah.
What happens when it doesn't? When that trust, that basic expectation of fairness gets totally blown up,
Right.
that's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
That's where we wade into the often murky, definitely complex world of consumer rights.
Absolutely.
And let me tell you, the legal battles raging right now over those very rights, well, they're shaping the future of how we're all protected as consumers.
Mm,
And it's not pretty, not always at least.
definitely not.
So today, we're going deep, deep dive style into some of the biggest, most consequential legal fights happening right now in the U.S.
Yeah.
Fights that will directly impact you, the listener.
You got it.
We've got a ton of material to unpack, some amazing discussions that break down who the players are, what's at stake, all of that.
That's a lot.
It is. But we're going to cut through the legal jargon, extract what you absolutely need to know about how these fights could swing, what they mean for your wallet, your privacy, even your health, and hopefully do it in a way that keeps things, well, engaging.
We'll try.
At least we'll try. So let's get right to it. When we talk about consumer protection law,
Hmm.
what are we really talking about? What's the fundamental purpose of these laws?
Okay, so at the most basic level, it's about shielding you, the individual consumer, from business practices that are unfair, like seriously unfair.
Not a fair how.
Practices that are deceptive, misleading, maybe even downright dangerous.
Okay, I'm following. So, I shouldn't have to worry about being tricked into buying something that's a total dud or worse could actually hurt me.
Exact.
These laws exist to create a baseline of fairness.
A level playing field.
So, in a perfect world, at least. Now, who are the folks making sure these protections actually have teeth, that they're enforced?
Right, right. So we're talking major government agencies here.
The big guns.
The big guns, you've got the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, they're a huge player.
Right.
Then you have the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. They're relatively new on the scene, but making a big splash.
Yeah, I've been hearing more and more about them.
Oh, yeah, they're taking on some tough cases. And we can't forget the state attorney generals. They have a lot of power, too, especially when it comes to consumer issues.
So they're like the watchdogs, making sure businesses are playing by the rules.
You got it. But, and there's always a but, right?
Always.
This whole system, this whole web of laws and protections, it's not static, not by a long shot. It's constantly being challenged.
Challenged how?
Well, you've got corporations filing lawsuits, sometimes trying to chip away at these regulations. Then there's lobbying, lots of it from various industries trying to influence how these laws are written and enforced.
So it's a constant tug of war.
Big time.
Mhm.
And then, of course, you have the Supreme Court. Their rulings can have a massive impact, sometimes completely reshaping the legal landscape for consumer rights.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not just a set it and forget it system. It's constantly evolving, always being debated.
Exactly. It's dynamic.
All right. So we've got these watchdogs, these agencies trying to keep things fair. Can we get into some specifics, like what are some actual consumer protection laws already in place, and what do they actually do for us, the everyday folks?
Okay, sure. Let's take the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the FCRA. Super important one.
Okay, the FCRA. I've heard of it, but break it down.
Basically, it gives you the right to know what information is being reported about your credit history.
Ah, credit reports, the bane of my existence.
Right. So this law ensures that that information is accurate, fair. It's a big deal because it affects everything from getting a loan to renting an apartment to sometimes even getting a job.
Wow, didn't realize it was that wide-reaching.
Oh, yeah, it touches so many aspects of your financial life.
That's huge. Okay, what else? What's another big word?
Okay, how about the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, the TCPA?
Oh, the TCPA. The one that's supposed to protect us from those annoying robocalls,
You got it.
the spam texts, the telemarketers calling at dinner time. I'm feeling a little passionate about this one.
We all are. So it aims to regulate those unwanted calls and messages, making sure you only get communications you've actually consented to.
In theory, at least. Because, let's be real, my phone's still blowing up sometimes.
Right, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But the TCPA, like all these laws, it's constantly being tested, challenged, reinterpreted.
And who's doing the challenging? I think we both know the answer to that one.
Yeah, often it's corporations pushing for deregulation.
Deregulation, meaning fewer rules, fewer restrictions on what they can do. What's the main argument behind that push?
Well, they argue, and I'm paraphrasing here, that too much regulation stifles businesses, that it holds back innovation, that it makes it harder for them to grow and create jobs.
Right, the classic red tape argument.
Okay.
But let's flip it, put on our consumer hats. Why are these protections so crucial for us, for the average person just trying to get by?
Because without them, we'd be incredibly vulnerable. We'd be easy targets for scams, for financial predators, for companies cutting corners on safety to boost their profits.
So it's about keeping us safe financially and physically.
Exactly. It's about ensuring that consumers have a fighting chance in the marketplace, that they're not constantly being taken advantage of by companies with more power, more resources.
So finding that balance, that sweet spot between allowing businesses to thrive and making sure consumers are protected, that's the crux of it all.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balancing act.
All right. That gives us some great context. Now, let's get down to brass tacks. Let's talk about some specific legal battles happening right now that really illustrate this whole tension between corporate interests and consumer rights.
Okay, sounds good.
First up, we have the CFPB going head-to-head with payday lenders. What's the story there?
Oh, this is a big one. This fight is all about predatory lending.
Payday lenders, those are the guys who offer short-term loans with, like, insanely high interest rates.
Right. Exactly. We're talking triple-digit interest rates sometimes.
Predatory is the right word.
It is. These loans can trap people in a cycle of debt that's really hard to break free from. And the CFPB, they've been trying to crack down to put some rules in place to protect borrowers.
And how are the payday lenders responding?
Well, they're not going down without a fight. They're suing the CFPB, trying to limit their authority.
I bet. So what's their main argument?
They're pushing for more state-level regulation, claiming that the federal government is overstepping its bounds.
But isn't that just a way to weaken the rules? Like, if every state has different regulations, wouldn't it be harder to protect consumers across the board?
That's the concern, yes. It could create a patchwork system where some states have strong protections and others, well, not so much.
So it becomes a race to the bottom, essentially.
In some ways, yes. But here's a wrinkle, something that really raises the stakes in this fight.
Oh, tell me more.
The Supreme Court recently weighed in on a case that challenged how the CFPB is funded. It was a pretty technical argument, but basically the outcome could weaken the CFPB's independence.
Whoa, so we're talking potentially limiting their ability to do their job to protect consumers.
Exactly. It's a huge deal, and the implications could reach far beyond just payday loans.
Wow, that's a big one to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Okay, switching gears a bit, let's talk big tech. There are tons of lawsuits swirling around data privacy, right? Class actions against the likes of Google, Meta, Amazon. What's the core issue there?
Yeah, it's all about data collection. These companies are gathering massive amounts of information about us, our online activities, our browsing habits, our location data, and frankly, a lot of people are feeling really uneasy about it.
Uneasy is an understatement.
Yeah.
It feels kind of creepy, right? Like they know way too much about us.
That's the feeling, yeah. And the lawsuits are essentially saying, hey, you're going too far. You need to be more transparent about what you're collecting, and you need to give us more control over our own data.
Makes sense. And isn't California trying to do something about this with their Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA?
Yeah, the CCPA was a big step. It gave California residents some rights over their data, like the right to know what's being collected, the right to delete it, the right to opt out of having it sold.
So at least there's some progress. But what about a federal law? Is that even on the table?
It's been talked about for years, but it's a tough one. There's a lot of pushback from the tech industry.
Of course there is. So what's their argument? What's their case against stricter data privacy rules?
Well, they say it'll stifle innovation, that it'll make it harder for them to develop new products and services, that it'll hurt their bottom line.
The same song, different verse.
Pretty much. But the stakes are high here. We're talking about the future of the internet, the future of our digital lives.
No small potatoes. Okay, let's move on to another hotbed of legal activity. Class action lawsuits against pharmaceutical companies. We all know about the opioid crisis and the huge settlements there, but what about newer cases focused on drug prices?
Oh, that's a big one, too. The opioid lawsuits, those were about accountability for the way those drugs were marketed, about the devastating consequences of addiction.
And those cases led to some pretty hefty payouts, right?
Huge payouts, billions of dollars. But now you're seeing more lawsuits targeting the sky-high prices of prescription drugs.
Yeah, it feels like everyone's complaining about the cost of medications these days.
For a good reason. People are struggling to afford the medications they need, and these lawsuits are alleging that drug companies are engaging in price fixing, that they're colluding to keep prices artificially high.
That's a serious accusation. How are the drug companies responding?
Well, predictably, they deny it. They say they're just charging what the market will bear. They also argue that developing new drugs is incredibly expensive, so they need to recoup their costs.
But is it really just about recouping costs? Or is there some good old-fashioned profit gouging going on?
That's the question, isn't it?
No.
And it's a question that these lawsuits are trying to answer.
All right, last but not least, let's talk about something that might seem a bit technical, but it has a huge impact on consumers. Supreme Court rulings on arbitration clauses.
Ah, arbitration clauses, the fine print that can come back to bite you.
Okay, break it down for us. What are they and why should we care?
So imagine you buy something, sign up for a service, whatever. You don't read the fine print because who does, right?
Guilty as charged.
Buried in there might be something called an arbitration clause. Basically, it says that if you have a dispute with the company, you can't sue them in court. You have to go through arbitration.
Arbitration meaning what?
It's like a private court system. You present your case to an arbitrator, usually a lawyer or a retired judge, and they make a decision.
And what's wrong with that?
Well, a few things. First, it's often biased in favor of the company. They get to choose the arbitrator. They often pay for the arbitration.
So the playing field is tilted.
Exactly. Plus, you usually waive your right to join a class action lawsuit.
So if a company's doing something shady that affects a lot of people, you can't team up with other consumers to fight back.
Right. And the Supreme Court in recent years has upheld the use of these arbitration clauses in a bunch of cases.
So it's getting harder and harder for consumers to hold companies accountable.
That's the trend, unfortunately. But there is some pushback. Consumer groups are fighting to get laws passed that would limit the use of arbitration clauses, especially in cases where there's a clear power imbalance between the consumer and the company.
That makes sense. So it's a fight worth watching. Okay, let's shift gears and look ahead. What's the future of consumer protection look like?
Honestly, it's hard to say. There are a lot of factors at play.
Like what?
Well, what kind of laws Congress passes or doesn't pass will have a huge impact. And then there's the courts. What the Supreme Court decides in future cases could completely reshape the landscape.
So a lot of uncertainty. But what are some potential risks we should be aware of? Like, what are some things that could weaken consumer protections?
Well, one thing to watch out for is funding cuts to agencies like the FTC and the CFPB.
Yeah, if they don't have the resources to do their job, that's a problem.
Absolutely. And then there's the risk of Congress passing laws that actually weaken existing protections, maybe under the guise of reducing regulation.
So we need to stay vigilant. But on the flip side, are there any positive trends that could lead to stronger protections?
Definitely. We're seeing a growing awareness of these issues among consumers. People are waking up to the fact that they need to protect themselves.
And that awareness can lead to action, right? Like
Yeah.
people demanding stronger laws, supporting consumer advocacy groups.
Exactly. And that kind of grassroots activism can be incredibly powerful.
It's all about knowing your rights and being willing to fight for them. Okay, before we wrap up, let's give our listeners some practical advice. What are some concrete steps they can take right now to be more informed and protected consumers?
Okay, first things first, research. Before you buy anything, before you sign any contract, do your homework. Look up reviews, check for complaints, see if there are any government warnings.
So don't just blindly trust what you see in ads or on a company's website.
No way. Dig a little deeper. It could save you a lot of trouble. Second, get involved. Support policies that promote transparency and fairness. Contact your elected officials. Tell them you care about consumer protection.
So use your voice. Make it heard.
Exactly. And third, know your rights. If you think a company is doing something shady, don't just shrug it off. File a complaint with the FTC, the CFPB, or your state attorney general.
So be an active participant, not a passive victim.
Exactly. The more we all do that, the stronger our collective voice will be.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So there you have it. Consumer protection is a complex world, constantly evolving, always being fought over. But by staying informed, being proactive, and knowing our rights, we can all play a part in shaping a fair, more equitable marketplace for everyone. Now, here's a final thought to leave you with. As you go about your day, think about all the ways you interact with businesses, big and small, and ask yourself, is the current system, the laws we have in place, is it really striking the right balance? Is it truly protecting consumers while also allowing businesses to thrive? The big question, one that deserves a lot of thought and discussion. And hopefully this deep dive has given you some food for thought. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay informed and stay vigilant.